My name's Wendy and I'm from the Learning in Libraries team. And one of the things I do is teach. I often teach managing anxiety, and in this current climate, anxiety is something all of us are feeling. So today I'm going to talk to you about what anxiety actually is. So we're going to start by looking at this not so great drawing of the brain that I've done, but I'm going to talk you through what's actually happening when you're feeling anxious. I'm going to start off by just reassuring you that anxiety is normal. Anxiety is an emotion we feel to keep us safe, and it's quite normal to have. Anxiety only becomes a problem when it stops us living our life in the way that we should be. We have feelings of anxiety as a little way of nagging us, telling us we should be doing something. If you're anxious about an exam, it's because you should be revising. If you're walking down an unlit street late at night and you feel uneasy, that's because your mind is telling you that maybe you should take some extra precautions, you might not be safe. That's normal and nothing to worry about at all. If, however, you're so anxious you don't go out of the house, that's when it becomes a problem. So I'm going to explain to you what's actually happening in your brain during this normal process. And for this, we're going to break the brain down into 3 sections. This part of the brain we're going to refer to as the thinking mind, also known as the neocortex. Now this part of the brain is the logical part of your brain. It's where you do any logical thinking, you do calculations, and where you do planning. This part of the brain here is your animal mind or your primitive mind, known as the subcortical regions. This is where emotions start, and it's very much your initial thoughts and feelings happen there. And this is the most important part of your brain, the thoughts and feelings regulator, also known as the prefrontal cortex. This has a really important job because it listens to what's happening in the thinking mind and what's happening in the animal mind, and it makes sense of that conversation. So for example, your animal mind will be having those initial instincts, the emotion-led thoughts. I like this, I'm fond of this, I want this. This part of your brain will be thinking through, do I need this? What have I done in this situation before? What evidence do I have? And this part of the brain pulls all of that together to help you make a decision. The thoughts and feelings regulator is really important in maintaining good mental health. And you will see in a couple of minutes what actually happens to it when we're feeling anxious. So this is your survival instinct. Your animal part of your mind is where your survival instincts kick in. You've probably heard of flight and fight, but there's also freeze and flop. Flight, fairly simple. It's that urge you have to run away and avoid a situation. Fight, where you feel defensive and you want to do something about it. Freeze is the rabbit in the headlights. You just can't do anything. You're stuck still. And the flop is like a play dead response. You're unresponsive. You're not reacting to anything at all. This is triggered by your animal mind. The thoughts and feelings regulator has an important job in quieting down the little chatter that's going on between your animal mind and your thinking mind. And it's really good at switching off the emotional responses that happen in your animal mind. Of course, this is all going on every day and we're not really aware of it. But when you're highly anxious, all of this is ramped up much higher than usual. This part of the brain, the thoughts and feelings regulator, thinks about thinking. It's like the supervisor listening to its staff and making decisions. So what happens when you're anxious? Well, the brain secretes something called neurochemicals, in this case catecholamines. And they play a really important role. They flood into the animal part of the brain. And while they're doing this, they're heightening all your senses. It's like a turbo boost. Your smell is stronger, your hearing is better, you are physically stronger so that you can run if you need to. And it's a really important response. But these neurochemicals leak, and they leak into the thoughts and feelings regulator. And when that happens, it stops this part, that supervisor part of your brain, working effectively. It dampens it down. This means you can't make sensible decisions and rational decisions because it's not able to pull in both sets of information. If you've had anxiety, you will know that afterwards you can feel really foggy, not quite sure what's going on, confused and tired. That is due to the neurochemicals that are kicking in. it clouds your judgment, stops this part working, so you can't make rational decisions. Now, in short bursts of anxiety, this is a really good thing. It boosts that animal instincts, gets you out of danger, helps you fight off that lion, whatever it is that you're up against. But if this is happening for long periods of time, more and more of the chemicals are washing into the thoughts and feelings regulator and making it less effective. And that in turn makes you more anxious, because your sensible, logical part of your brain isn't able to feed into the thoughts and feelings regulator, and this part isn't able to help you make decisions. Therefore, you make yourself more anxious, flooding more neurochemicals in, and you get stuck into this loop that you can't help yourself getting into. You're just feeding your brain, dampening it down with the neurochemicals and not able to make decisions. Long exposure to the neurochemicals can actually start to damage the regulator, and it takes longer and longer to fix. But there are things you can do to help switch this process off. We can look at one of those now. So in times of anxiety, when you need to reset this, one of the things you can do is to try what's called a grounding exercise. This is something you can do while you're just sitting. Don't have to do anything special. Sit still and think. And I want you to use all of your 5 senses, and they've been boosted, as we've said, by those neurochemicals. That's why this is a really good exercise to do. So you sit still, and you can either say these things out loud or just say them to you in your head, depending whether you're on your own or not. Think about 5 things that you can see. What's in the room? What can you see out the window? What's on the floor in front of you? Just run through those 5 things. The next, 4 things that you can feel. What does your skin like? Is your hair soft? Is your clothing soft or rough? What about the chair you're sitting on? Think about the things you can feel and actually feel them with your fingers, and think about the textures you're feeling. Then concentrate and think about 3 things you can hear. It may be nothing, it may be your breathing, it may be the ticking of a clock, but just focus on the things that you can hear. Next is what you can smell. This can be a bit more difficult. 2 things that you can smell. Hopefully nice smells, but not always. Maybe you can smell somebody cooking bacon for their breakfast, or what they're having for lunch, or the smell of freshly cut grass. And this one for me is always a good excuse to have chocolate on hand. But one thing you can taste, lots of people who suffer with anxiety on a regular basis carry gum or mints around with them so they can pop it in your mouth. And this is just thinking about, what did it taste like in your mouth? What does it feel like? What sensations? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it sweet? Is it sour? 5 simple steps that you can do anywhere without really having anything with you. And this helps you stop this cycle of anxiety. It takes your heightened senses and uses it as a reset switch. It's called a grounding exercise, and I think it'd be worth